In the 9 months since he'd moved from the last of 5 foster homes to our home, attempts to hug my adopted 7-year-old son earned me a slap, a punch, sometimes a kick. I didn't want to give up, but I didn't want another fat lip either. I decided to focus on activities that we could do side by side and let physical affection develop over time. He sat on the edge of the raised garden bed, straight brown hair sparkling in the sun, while he peeled leaves off a stick of bamboo. Maybe it was family genetics, maybe drug effects, or lack of nutrition, but he was just a waif of a boy. Though 7, he was in 4-year-old size blue jeans and a striped polo shirt. I gripped a gigantic dandelion. "Let's play Zex," his squeaky voice piped up. I yanked so hard on that dandelion I almost fell over. "Excuse me?" He raised his freckled face toward mine. "Play what?" "Zex." That's what I thought he said. Though his case file was silent on the issue of sex abuse, it took him an hour, sometimes 2, to fall asleep at night, and when he did, his eyelids stayed half open. Occasional nighttime tantrums devolved into screams of, "You can't do this to me!" His rage could have been due to simple lack of experience with a structure like bedtime, but maybe not. One psychologist suggested it was best to assume that any child from a meth environment had been sexually abused. "How would we play this, Zex?" I tossed the dandelion onto a growing pile. He leapt to his feet, and his bamboo clattered to the concrete patio. "If we put a hanky over here," he thrust his butt out and patted one back pocket, "it means we're looking for boys." I might have inhaled a bug. "If we put a hanky over here," he patted his other back pocket, "it means we're looking for girls." In the years since, I've wished I could press rewind on that moment and hear it again. He could not have said that, except he did. His eyes were bright and his tone of voice lively, as if he just suggested, "Let's play hide and seek," or "Let's play battleship," or "Let's play tag." My mouth hung open for a couple more beats. "If we find these boys or girls," I brushed my gloved palms together to shake off the dirt, "what are we going to do with them?" "Zex!" He put his hands on his hips. "You know." I wanted to hear it from him, not put words in his mouth or scare him into silence. With my freaked out tone, I waited. His cheeks turned hot red. "Humping," he gyrated his hips a little in case I really wasn't familiar, "and all that." I could have asked for clarification on all that, but I chose a different direction. "Why would we do this sex?" He slapped both palms against his forehead. "Oh, for money." I stared at the little boy a few feet away from me. With his skinny child body and round face, he radiated innocence. I longed to scoop him into my arms, let him rest his head on my shoulder, fall asleep safe and sound. But now, maybe I understood his kicks and punches. I stammered something about how grown-ups don't have sex with little kids, only as soon as I said it, I realized, of course, I was wrong. Sometimes they do. I told him he was safe here, then immediately wondered if he'd heard that before and found it suspicious. I told him I'd be glad to play a different kind of game with him. He snatched up his bamboo and without a word strode across the grass, slicing at the air. This boy I barely knew, but who was now my son, tucked his make-believe sword through his belt loop, reached up, and swung onto a branch of our mimosa tree. He climbed the limb and disappeared through the trap door of the treehouse we'd built for him. Had that pint-sized swashbuckler just suggested sex with me? In retrospect, I think it was a test. He'd spent the previous 9 months fighting off touch, probably wondering when and where one or the other of his new parents would want to play Zex with him, and finally decided to just get it over with. My little pirate would still have a lot to figure out about who to touch and who not to, and when and how. We'd deal with some serious transgressions in the future. But between the two of us, the question of Zex seemed put to rest that afternoon. A tiny door to trust cracked open. That night, I read him a story, tucked him in, and sat in the rocking chair beside his bed for over an hour. When his eyes were finally at half-mast, I started to tiptoe out of the room. He thrust his skinny arms out from under the covers and grunted at me. You sure? He replied with a fleeting nod, and so I bent over and received nothing more and nothing less than one quick hug. Thank you.